Hi everybody, this is Julie Quinn. I was talking to one of your classmates today on the phone and we were brainstorming ideas for the cause effect paper, and I thought, you know what, since I mentioned in a previous recording that I thought it would be a good idea for you guys to come up with like an extended outline, because this is the most complex excuse me, of the papers that you're putting together, why don't I do one for you as a sample to give you an idea of what the structure of this paper can look like. Okay, so what I've got here is the cause effect paper layout. This is my extended outline. And the topic that I chose for this was related to one of the topics on your assignment, a handout. The topic was effects of a particular drug. And so I thought, well, you know, I saw in the news very recently, let me pull it up here if I can find it. I just saw this article, overdose cases spike in Louisville, 52 calls in 32 hours. This was updated today. This is from Friday, February 10th. And I thought, well, that certainly is newsworthy, timely, academic, and really sort of highlights what we want to see in this paper. So for example, what are the effects of this opioid epidemic? And there are plenty to choose from, and there are different ways that you can organize this paper. So I came up with a quick and dirty little organizational plan to show you kind of what this looks like. And now you can let me know if you have questions as you continue to develop this. So this is not a full introduction. These are just notes that I've put together so far. So your introduction warms readers up to the issue and states the thesis. Okay. Warm up reader state thesis. Okay. There's a significant opioid epidemic happening in Louisville, Kentucky, or happening, you could say, across America, because the research happening in 2017. Recently, timely, newsworthy, academic, medical. Okay. I named two reporters. It was Ralph Ellis and Keith Allen. I need to add Keith Allen's name here. Okay, where is it? Keith Allen. You could say CNN reporters. Ralph Ellis, Keith Allen reported that, and I think let's go back to this article. We're going to make sure that we get it was Louisiana Metro Emergency Services responded to. So I'm going to borrow that. There we go. Okay. Reported that Louisiana Metro Emergency Services responded to 52 overdose calls between midnight Wednesday and 8 a.m. Friday. So I'm also just going to make sure that the format is all the same. So I've named my sources right away, and since this came out in 2017, there's APA formatting. It's your in-text citation with your copyright year. And then I'm using this detail right here as a hook. Hook details and introductions. It's a data point that draws readers in, that captures them to your topic, that sort of sets the scene. Okay, so we know for the moment that Louisiana Metro Emergency Services are responding to 52 overdose calls within like a 48-hour window. Okay, then what you want to do is do a bit more overview of it, that this is not just happening in Kentucky, that this is happening across the United States. It's been building since maybe you've done a little bit of research before I think you can really write this introduction, but once you do, this is going to be pretty interesting. So what I'm highlighting here in yellow is what you have to do. Remind yourself, you have to draw this out and then give it your thesis. So here's the thesis. The effects of this opioid epidemic are wide ranging. It's not just narrow. It's not just Kentucky. It's happening everywhere. This is your plan of development. Death and long-term health consequences to those who partake, you know, and for any children exposed. That's part one. That's the first point you're going to argue. The second point, the effects are family breakdown, right? If addicted parents lose custody, addicted parents can often die. They can get their kids addicted. There's a lot of problems within the family, right? And then my final third point would be an unsustainable financial burden in counties and states where these people live. So I'm taking in this essay sort of a wider ranged approach. That approach is that you can focus on just the health effects. You could do an entire paper on the physical effects of opioid addiction. Or which could be like informational. It's not that you're arguing, now stop doing drugs, but that's informational, that's expository. But a paper with the structure that I'm showing you here could be, okay, here are all the different reasons why we must legislate against doctors overprescribing, and part of that's going to be an overprescription issue. Okay, maybe you find that that's one of the effects as well. So the plan development is related to that thesis. It connects. It's because or from. It shows a relationship between argument and the reasons why. Now you'll see that right here in my body paragraphs, where it says it's not just 3 paragraphs, right? But 3, 4, I've got a couple here, and each of these points could be more than 1 paragraph. It just depends on how much space you have for your paper, and some points are more important than others, so some may be 2 paragraphs, some may just be 1. It just really depends on what you're arguing. Flexible. I thought, though, that not all readers are medical professionals and are versed on the topic. So it may be that in paragraph 2, you do a definition paragraph. What is an opioid, and how does it generally work? Before we talk about it being abuse, so you give readers even more background. The epidemic, you're warming them up at paragraph 1, but paragraph 2 is what is an opioid, right? How long it's been going on, why it's getting worse, and then your effects, the physical effects, the family and social effects, and then the financial effects. Okay, so these are the 3 main effects, and this type of paper is organized, you could say, generally speaking, by order of importance. First is somebody's going to die from it. Second is it's going to really mess with the families that are left behind. And third, it's going to cost the state. You could organize that however you wish, and in a paper that's order of importance, it depends on the research you've done, the argument you want to make, but this could go in a variety of orders. But whatever order you go in, you want to make sure the order of your evidence matches the order of your plan of development, right? We start with death and long-term. There we go. Then family and social effects, and then financial effects for the locales. Okay. So I've made some notes here on the side that this is your academic frame, which includes the introduction, the body paragraphs of effects, then any counterpoints. Now, it could be, unfortunately, that there are some positive effects to opioid, I'm going to pronounce that wrong, opioid use, but not abuse, but then there's this fine line. I mean, I've had significant orthopedic surgeries. I shattered my kneecap and tore my ACL, my MCL when I was in college. I've had shoulder surgery within the last year, and every time I have these surgeries, my doctor prescribes me like a hydrocodone, which is an opioid, and I am like, no, don't give it to me, because I'm worried about addiction. And so I'm like, just give me Tylenol 3. But they always give me these big prescription bottles full of it, and most people tend to do really well with opioids. It helps them recover from a back injury. It helps them recover from a car accident. The counterpoint is that doctors should be prescribing, but maybe not as often. So you could see that you may not always have a counterpoint, but when you're talking about like a social issue, like, and how it affects not just the body, but the people around the person doing the drug, that you may have some points that you want to acknowledge, and that's what's called counterpoints. Okay. Opposition is also known as like oppositional points. Something to think about. You may not always have this, but if you're posting today your draft and you have some notes, you want to say, is there a counterpoint that works with this paper? Then I can jump in and say, yes, if you thought about X, Y, and Z. Okay. So in addition to all of this, again, you have your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. The conclusion mirrors the introduction. It restates your thesis. It offers suggestions for readers. Talk to your physicians, talk about, especially if you have an addictive personality, about options instead of opioids, maybe more physical therapy. Talk to your Congress people, get involved in XYZ programs, be aware of the what it looks like when somebody's addicted, so you can, if you see a family member that you're concerned about. There are all sorts of interesting ways that you can re-acknowledge the thesis and give your reader some action points, right? That's what a good conclusion kind of does. And this is a conclusion for a persuasive version of this paper. If you're doing expository, you're not going to tell your readers what to do. You're just explaining in even more detail those effects. Okay? Now, I thought it would be really good to show you what some of these working sources can look like. Okay, the first three that I I found through doing an initial one search. I searched opioid epidemic and I found an article called "Is the Prescription Opioid Epidemic a White Problem?" That was out of the American Journal of Public Health. And I narrowed down all of my searches to 2015 on beyond because there's so much published content. I still had 350 hits just within the last year. And if I changed my search terms, I could find even more, I'm sure, but this was plenty. Then I found one that said primary care physicians' perspectives on the prescription opioid epidemic, which I think is really interesting. That was out of a journal called Drug and Alcohol Dependence. And then I found one, hospitals harness EHR state databases to combat the opioid epidemic. Hospitals and health networks, that's that journal. So you can see, I found a ton of information within journals, but I also found really good information from good, trustworthy websites like the Centers for Disease Control or the National Institutes on Drug Abuse or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And then the last two, one was that first quote from my introduction from CNN, the overdose cases in Louisville to set the scene. And then one was an opinion piece from the Washington Post. And I've included some of those links here. So you can kind of see my research that I've done here. This, and of course I'm an expert at doing academic research, but this took me, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And your first sources may not be the sources you end up using. You should continue to research this week as you keep writing, even if you have a draft. Okay? So think about giving me just an extended outline this week, and then maybe we work at the end of the week with your drafts. But if you have a draft, I would love to see it. So I'm not suggesting that you don't submit a draft, but I'm suggesting let's get some good groundwork. Please research first before you do any significant writing, especially if it's a topic you're not familiar with. If it's one you're familiar with, we can balance out the writing and the reading and do that concurrently. But you want to get your research done so you feel like you can write from a position of understanding. We don't want to cherry pick our research and just find research that fills in our blanks later because we could misinterpret some of these complex topics. Reach out and talk to me if you have any questions. I hope this video helps you envision how you can structure this cause-effect essay. I look forward to seeing what you got.